What if I told you that half of what you're seeing here is fake? We've got a problem with Mozart's portraits, and I'm not only speaking about the plague of AI-generated artwork. A good chunk of legit historical paintings often used to depict Mozart in books and other media are also spurious or misattributions. In this video, we'll review some of his most famous portraits and sort them out according to their authenticity in these three tiers. First, misattributed portraits that are simply not Mozart. Second, dubious works with divided opinions among scholars. Third, confirmed historical Mozart portraits that were made shortly after his death or using another authentic picture as reference. And fourth, genuine Mozart portraits made from life. Let's get to it. Number 1. 6-year-old Mozart posing in court costume. This famous painting is supposed to be one of the earliest portraits ever made of the Salzburg genius. But is it real? Yes. The painting was commissioned by his father Leopold to the Italian painter Pietro Antonio Lorenzoni, and it's currently owned by the Mozarteum University in Salzburg. The portrait was originally meant to be paired with a second painting by Lorenzoni, depicting Mozart's elder sister, Nannerl. Number 2. This portrait of a young boy was painted by the French artist Jean-Baptiste Rose and is currently owned by the Yale University. But who is the boy? We don't really know. Some scholars think this could be an authentic portrait of Mozart, possibly made during one of his early travels across Europe. However, there is no mention to this concrete painting in the family's correspondence of that period. While some of the boy's facial features may resemble other authentic Mozart portraits, the overall facial shape is clearly different and less rounded. Additionally, the clothes displayed here are nothing like the expensive costumes that Mozart usually wears in most of his authentic portraits. Number 3. One of the most iconic portraits of the young Mozart, used in countless books, documentaries and other media. This one is, of course... Where do we start? First, the eye colors don't match. Mozart was blue-eyed, while the sitter in this painting clearly has dark brown eyes. And last but not least, the sitter has been recently identified as Count Karl Maximilian Firmian, a Mozart's childhood friend who was also born the same year as him. Number 4. One of the finest paintings of this list, depicting a 10-year-old Mozart sitting at the keyboard. Except it doesn't. Despite its fame, there is absolutely no evidence that connects this portrait to Mozart in any way. As far as we know, this is just the portrait of an unknown young musician in Paris. Number 5. Teen Mozart at the harpsichord. It always shocked me how different Mozart looks in this picture compared to other alleged authentic portraits, and this one is... authentic. The work was painted during Mozart's stay in Verona, Italy in 1770, and it's considered one of his most faithful portraits from his early years. Additionally, a famous copy of this painting was made almost a century later. Number 6. Young Mozart in blue coat. You may have come across this picture at some point, but is it really him? Scholars are divided on this one, and there is no conclusive evidence to confirm that Mozart is the sitter of this portrait. Some have pointed out the Mozartian features of the young man. But then again, it's not like Mozart was the only guy back then with a big nose and a powered wig. Number 7. Dark coat Mozart, the one with the depressing look. And this one is... authentic, or at least in part. This painting is an anonymous copy made after a lost original from 1770, and that's why we can include it in the top tier of our list. The original painting was made in Bologna, Italy, and according to one of Mozart's father's letters, the resemblance was outstanding. However, the Salzburg copy we see here was made 7 years later, and there is a chance that some facial details might have been altered in the process. In the picture we can see the Order of the Golden Spar, a distinction given to Mozart by the Pope himself during his visit to Rome. Number 8. The Mozart Family. This painting depicts Mozart sitting at the keyboard next to his sister Nannerl and opposing his father Leopold. The picture hanging on the wall is Mozart's mother, Anna Maria, who had recently passed away. Now, is this portrait legit, or maybe a modern recreation? This portrait was commissioned by Leopold in Salzburg and is now held at the Mozartian University. Number 9. The mysterious and finished Mozart Portrait. This dramatic painting depicts an introspective Mozart looking down, presumably during a piano performance. The particular posing and the lack of wig are uncommon traits for a regular portrait of this period, and one has the feeling that something is off. This is certainly not a regular portrait. It was painted by Joseph Lange, an actor and amateur painter who also happened to be Mozart's brother-in-law. The painting was most likely meant for private use, and that explains the liberties with regard to other authentic portraits. A very unique feature of this painting is that it allows us to see what Mozart's natural hair color was like. Number 10. The big-nosed Mozart. Is this really him? The opinion is divided among scholars. The Mozartian University of Salzburg considers it authentic, and some investigators have pointed out the similarities between the clothing in this picture and the famous red coat worn by Mozart in other authentic portraits. On the other hand, the context of the painting remains unclear, and there is no definitive proof other than a reasonable likeness. Number 11. The Mozart Sketch Portrait. Another wigless portrait, now kind of in a comical fashion. Is this authentic or some kind of joke? Apparently, it is authentic, or at least widely regarded as so by most scholars. It is assumed that this charming little portrait was made by Dora Stock during a quick visit of Mozart to Dresden, Germany in 1789. Number 12. One of my favorites of all Mozart's portraits, not only because of the outstanding technique, but also because of the casual attitude of the sitter. However, this one is also very controversial among scholars, and there is no conclusive documental evidence. In my opinion, however, the facial features of the person depicted here match perfectly the ones from other authentic portraits, especially the weak chin and the bulging eyes. Let me know what you think in the comments. Number 13. The Why So Serious Mozart. A quite contrasting attitude here compared to the previous ones. And no, it's not considered authentic. Little is known about the specific context of this painting, but it's widely assumed by scholars that the person portrayed is not Mozart, despite the numerous copies distributed during the 19th century claiming otherwise. Number 14. The Candy Eyes Mozart, the sweetest representation of the Austrian composer. Is it too good to be real? I'm afraid yes. There is some serious lack of information on this painting, and sources don't even agree on the complete name of the painter. This work was most likely made in the second half of the 19th century, and is by all means an artistic recreation of Mozart with no historical accuracy. And yes, it is a portrait of Mozart and an interesting piece of art, but with regard to historical authenticity, we won't consider it any more valuable than your average fan art. And number 15. The Mozart Kugel. This is by far the most famous portrait of Mozart, used in all kinds of merchants across Vienna and the rest of the world. But how authentic it actually is? It's close enough. This is a posthumous portrait made by Barbara Kraft in 1819. The work was supervised by Mozart's sister Nannerl, who provided Kraft with 3 authentic portraits for references, one of which was obviously the Mozart family painting from the 1780s. Kraft's portrait is not only reasonably accurate, but a very fine piece of art by itself. That's all for today. Let me know if this video was helpful, and see you next time.